The sensor alarm chimed softly aboard the Imperial scout vessel Eternal Vigilance. Junior Sensor Officer Plixon straightened in his station, his three eyes focusing on the holographic display that materialized before him. A contact, unidentified, moving through the outer reaches of Sector 447 at what could only be described as a pathetic crawl. "Commander Veshik," Plixon called out, his vocal membranes fluttering with barely contained amusement. "I have an unknown vessel. Configuration does not match any known species in the database." Commander Veshik rose from his command throne, his scaled hide gleaming under the ship's bioluminescent lighting. The Zarathian officer had served the Empire for 40 cycles, and in that time, he had encountered 17 species at various stages of development. Each time the result was the same. They saw the might of the Zarathian Galactic Empire and understood their place in the universe. "Display it," Veshik ordered. The main view screen flickered to life. There, against the backdrop of distant stars, hung a vessel that looked like it had been assembled by children, playing with scrap metal. It was enormous, easily 3 kilometers in length, but its design was crude. Cylindrical sections connected by what appeared to be simple mechanical joints. Massive rotating sections that probably provided artificial gravity through centrifugal force. How quaint. The Empire had abandoned such primitive methods 8,000 years ago. "Analysis," Veshik commanded. "Propulsion appears to be fusion-based," Plixon reported, his voice filled with barely suppressed laughter. "Primitive fusion, Commander. They are using controlled hydrogen burning to generate thrust. Their maximum velocity appears to be approximately 0.03 times light speed." Other officers on the bridge began to chuckle. Fusion drives. The Empire had used those when they were still crawling between their home system's inner planets. "Life signs?" Veshik asked, scanning now. "Difficult to penetrate their hull. It appears to be remarkably dense for such a primitive construction." "Ah, there we are. Reading approximately 12,000 life forms. Bipedal, oxygen breathers, carbon-based. Standard template, really. Nothing special." Veshik settled back into his throne. Another species taking its first stumbling steps into the greater galaxy. How many times had he witnessed this? They always thought they were special, that their little achievements in getting from one star to another meant something. Then they encountered the Empire and realized how small they truly were. "Hail them," Veshik ordered. "Let us see if they have developed translation protocols at least." The communications officer worked at his station, broadcasting a standard greeting across all known frequency bands. For a long moment there was no response. Then the view screen split and a face appeared. It was female, Veshik guessed, though with new species it was always difficult to tell. She had pale skin, dark hair tied back efficiently, and 2 forward-facing eyes that suggested a predator species. Her expression was calm, curious even, but not fearful. That would change. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations ship Endeavor," the alien said. Her words came through clearly, the ship's translation matrix working flawlessly. "We're a colony vessel from Earth, heading to establish a settlement in the new Terra system. Can we help you?" Veshik stood, drawing himself to his full height. The gesture was wasted on a view screen, but protocol was protocol. "I am Commander Veshik of the Zarathian Galactic Empire, commander of the Imperial scout vessel Eternal Vigilance. You have entered territory claimed by the Empire, which has maintained order in this region of space for 12,000 of your years." He watched for the reaction. Usually this was when the realization set in. When new species understood they were not alone in the universe and that they were very, very small in the grand scheme of things. Captain Chen nodded slowly. "We didn't detect any territorial markers or communication buoys. Our apologies if we've intruded. We'll be happy to adjust our course if needed. Professional, polite, not quite showing the appropriate level of awe yet, but that would come." "Your intrusion is forgiven," Veshik said magnanimously. "Tell me, Captain Chen, is this your species' first venture beyond your home system?" "Our first colony ship, yes," Chen replied. "We've been preparing for this for a long time." "I see. And how long did it take you to reach this point in space?" "We launched from Earth orbit 18 months ago. We've been accelerating and decelerating in shifts. Should reach New Terra in another 6 months. Plixon couldn't contain his laughter this time. 2 years to cross a distance the Empire could traverse in 3 days. These humans were infants playing at being spacefarers. Veshik silenced his officer with a gesture, though he shared the sentiment. "Captain Chen, I feel it is my duty to inform you of certain realities. The galaxy is not an empty place waiting to be colonized. There are powers, ancient powers that have established order across vast regions of space. The Zarathian Empire is one such power. We're aware there might be other species out here, Chen said. We've hoped to make contact peacefully. It's one of the reasons we've been broadcasting our presence rather than trying to hide. A wise decision, though perhaps arrived at through ignorance rather than true wisdom, Veshik said. Captain, your species is in a precarious position. You are vulnerable. Your technology is primitive. Your ship, while impressively large, would not last 30 seconds against even a single Imperial corvette. Your weapons, if you have any, are likely chemical or kinetic in nature. Your sensors cannot detect threats until they are nearly upon you. He let that sink in for a moment before continuing. However, the Empire is not without mercy. We have encountered many species at your level of development. We offer them a choice. They can accept the protection of the Empire, contribute to our economy and society, and in return receive access to technology that would take them thousands of years to develop on their own. Or they can refuse, attempt to go it alone, and inevitably fall prey to the many dangers that lurk in the dark spaces between stars. Chen's expression didn't change much, but Veshik noticed her jaw tighten slightly. Good. She was beginning to understand. What would this protection entail? She asked. Your species would become a protectorate of the Empire. You would pay tribute in the form of resources and labor. In return, we would provide defense, trade opportunities, and technological assistance. Your people would be integrated into the lower tiers of Imperial society. It is, I assure you, a generous offer. There was a pause. Chen seemed to be consulting with someone off-screen. Veshik smiled. They were probably panicking, realizing how outmatched they were. When Chen turned back to the screen, her expression was pleasant but firm. Commander Veshik, I appreciate the offer, but we'll have to decline. Humanity has worked very hard to reach the stars on our own terms. We're not interested in becoming anyone's protectorate. We're happy to establish diplomatic relations, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, but we intend to remain independent. The bridge of the eternal vigilance went silent. Veshik felt his crest rise in surprise. Refuse? This primitive species that was crawling through space on fusion torches was refusing the protection of the Empire? Captain Chen, Veshik said, his voice taking on a harder edge, I don't think you understand the situation. This is not a negotiation. This is reality. You cannot survive without the Empire's protection. We've survived for 200,000 years without meeting you, Chen replied calmly. I think we'll manage. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a schedule to keep. It was interesting meeting you, Commander. Perhaps our peoples can talk more in the future under better circumstances. The screen went blank. She had terminated the communication. She had dismissed him like he was some minor functionary rather than a commander of the Imperial fleet. Sir, Plixen said quietly, they are continuing on their previous course. They have not altered trajectory. Veshik stood frozen for a moment. In his entire career, no species had ever simply refused and then ignored the Empire. They either accepted immediately or tried to flee. They didn't just casually continue on their way. Interesting, Veshik said finally. Plixen, compile all sensor data on that vessel. I want a complete analysis. Then transmit it to Fleet Command along with a full report of this encounter. Yes, sir. Shall we pursue? No, Veshik said thoughtfully. No, we will let them go for now. They are on their way to establish a colony, they said. That means there is a homeworld somewhere. Earth, she called it. We will need to find this Earth. He returned to his command throne, his mind already composing the report. Let the High Command decide how to handle these foolish humans. They would learn. Species always learned one way or another that the Empire did not make offers twice. Sir, the tactical officer spoke up. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from that vessel. Their fusion reactors are producing far more power than they should be capable of producing, given their apparent technological level. Explain. According to the sensor data, their reactors are running at efficiencies that shouldn't be possible with simple fusion. The containment fields are crude but remarkably stable. And their hull, sir. The density is odd. It's almost as if they've compressed the molecular structure somehow. But that would require technology they shouldn't possess. Veshik waved a hand dismissively. Probably just inefficient systems producing excess heat and radiation. Primitive species often build things that leak energy in all directions. As for the hull density, perhaps they simply used a naturally dense material. Some species get lucky with their planetary resources. Yes, sir, although what? Their reactor output, sir. It's approximately 3 times what our projection suggested it should be. That's a significant discrepancy. Noted, included in the report. Now let us move on. We have 3 more systems to survey before the cycle ends. The Eternal Vigilance turned away from the lumbering human colony ship and engaged its faster-than-light drives. In an instant, it vanished, leaving the Endeavour alone in the black. Aboard the human vessel, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the command center surrounded by her senior staff. The mood was tense. That went better than expected, her first officer, Commander James Park, said dryly. Chen smiled slightly. They think we're primitives. That's fine. Let them think that. Should we warn Earth? Asked Lieutenant Foster from Communications. Already done. I sent a quantum entangled burst the moment they appeared on sensors. Earth Command knows we've made first contact and that it wasn't exactly friendly. They're going to come looking for Earth, Park said. You know that, right? I'm counting on it, Chen replied. By the time they find it, we'll be ready to show them that humanity didn't spend 400 years in the solar system, just building fusion drives. She turned to look at the viewport, where stars stretched past as the Endeavour continued its slow, steady journey. To the Zorathians, they looked like children, primitive, weak, good. How long until we reach New Terra? Chen asked. 6 months, 17 days at current velocity, the navigator replied. Good, that should be just enough time. Enough time for what, Captain? Foster asked. Chen's smile widened slightly. Enough time for the shipyards back home to finish the new fleet. You know, the one that doesn't use fusion drives. Park chuckled. I almost feel bad for them. Almost. Don't, Chen said, her voice taking on a harder edge. They offered us servitude dressed up as protection. They looked at us and saw prey. Whatever happens next, they brought it on themselves. She pulled up a display showing the Endeavour's specifications. To anyone looking at it, including the Zorathians, it appeared to be a simple fusion-powered colony ship. Chemical rockets for maneuvering, rotating sections for gravity, primitive and slow. What they couldn't see, what their sensors couldn't penetrate through the heavily compressed hull plating, were the prototype weapon systems hidden in the cargo sections, the miniaturized fusion antimatter reactors that were currently running in low-power mode, the manufacturing facilities that were even now printing out components for defensive systems. The Endeavour was a test bed, a proof of concept, a way to see how advanced species would react to humanity's emergence. Now they knew. Chen opened a private channel to Earth Command, using the quantum communicator that the Zorathians didn't even know existed. Command, this is Chen, first contact made. Species is hostile in a condescending way. They consider us primitive and weak. Recommend we proceed with Operation Surprise Party. Let's show them what 4 centuries of focused engineering can accomplish. The response came back instantly, traveling faster than light through quantum entanglement. Confirmed, Captain. Operation Surprise Party is greenlit. Construction is ahead of schedule. 6 months until the first battle group is ready. Try not to start a war before then, Chen smiled. No promises, Command. Chen out. She closed the channel and looked around at her crew. They were all smiling now. They knew what was coming. Humanity had spent 400 years trapped in one solar system, unable to crack faster than light travel. So they had done what humans did best. They had perfected everything else. Material science, manufacturing, weapons, defense, power generation. They had pushed every other technology to its absolute limit, while the galaxy presumably flew around using faster-than-light drives and energy weapons. Now finally they would see if their approach worked. All hands, Chen announced over the ship-wide intercom. This is the captain. I'm pleased to announce that we have successfully made first contact with an alien species called the Zorathians. They seem to think we're primitives who need protection. In 6 months, we're going to show them exactly what kind of primitives we are. Continue your duties. Stay sharp. And remember, we represent all of humanity now. Let's make Earth proud. Cheers echoed through the corridors of the Endeavour as the ship continued its slow journey through space, looking for all the world like a primitive vessel, crewed by a species that barely understood the universe around them. The Zorathians would learn the truth soon enough. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and they had brought weapons the Empire couldn't even imagine. Patrol Commander Vixrel of the Zarathian Imperial Border Fleet was having a monumentally boring day. 6 cycles into his posting at Checkpoint Helix 9, and the most exciting thing he had witnessed was a merchant vessel with slightly outdated registration papers. The merchant had apologized profusely, paid the fine, and continued on his way. That was 3 days ago. Since then, nothing but empty space and the distant glow of stars. He lounged in his command chair, reviewing reports with the kind of half-hearted attention that came from reading the same thing for the 1,000th time. Checkpoint Helix 9 sat at the intersection of 3 minor trade routes in a backwater region of Imperial space. Nothing important ever happened here. That was why junior commanders like himself got posted here. Do your time, stay out of trouble, and eventually earn a transfer to somewhere that mattered. Contact, Sensor Officer Kelmis announced suddenly, her tone bored. Single vessel emerging from FTL at marker 7. Vixrel didn't even look up from his reports. Identification? Running it now, that's odd. That made Vixrel glance up. Kelmis had been doing this job longer than he had been alive. She didn't say things were odd unless they truly were. What is it? IFF signature is registering as UN's Defiant. United Nations ship. Database indicates United Nations is the governing body of species classified as human. First contact was logged approximately 6 months ago by Commander Veshik of the Eternal Vigilance. Vixrel sat up straighter. Humans, the primitive fusion drive species? Affirmative. Although, Commander, this vessel does not match the configuration from the first contact files. The Endeavor was a 3-kilometer colony ship. This vessel is much smaller, approximately 400 meters. Configuration is unusual. Vixrel called up the visual feed on his main screen. The human ship hung in space about 10,000 kilometers from the checkpoint. It was sleek, he had to admit. Where the Endeavor had been all awkward angles and visible mechanical connections, this vessel was smooth, almost organic in its curves. No visible weapons ports, but then primitives often hid their crude kinetic launchers inside retractable housings. Hail them, Vixrel ordered. Let us see what these humans want. The communication channel opened almost instantly. A human face appeared on screen. Male, Vixrel guessed. Dark skin, short hair, and an expression of polite attention. This is Commander Marcus Webb of the UNS Defiant. Good afternoon, Checkpoint Helix 9. We're requesting clearance to transit through Zarathian space to reach Sector 451. We have no hostile intentions, and will comply with all traffic regulations. Vixrel studied the human, so polite, so respectful. Perhaps they had learned their place in the 6 months since first contact. Perhaps they had realized that refusing the Empire's protection was foolish. Commander Webb, I am Patrol Commander Vixrel. Before we can grant transit permission, your vessel must submit to a standard inspection. This is Imperial protocol for all unknown vessel configurations. You will power down your engines and allow a boarding team to examine your ship and cargo. Webb's expression didn't change, but Vixrel noticed a slight pause before he responded. Commander Vixrel, I appreciate the protocol, but we're not carrying any cargo. This is a warship on a patrol mission. We don't allow foreign boarding parties onto military vessels. I'm sure you understand. However, we're happy to transmit our ship specifications and mission parameters if that would help. Warship. The human had called this small vessel a warship. Vixrel felt amusement bubble up in his chest. This tiny ship, barely larger than an Imperial courier, was their idea of a military vessel, and they had the audacity to refuse inspection. Commander Webb, you seem to be under a misapprehension. This is not a negotiation. All vessels transiting Imperial space must submit to inspection. If you refuse, you will not be granted passage. If you attempt to proceed without authorization, you will be fired upon. These are the laws of the Empire. Another pause. Webb seemed to be consulting with someone off-screen. Commander Vixrel, we don't want any trouble. We're simply passing through. Can we perhaps arrange an alternative? Maybe an escort through your space? We'd be happy to have your ships accompany us. The alternative is to turn around and leave Imperial space, Vixrel said firmly. Or submit to inspection. Choose now, Webb sighed. I'm sorry, Commander, but we can't allow a boarding party. Our orders are very clear on that point. We're going to proceed on our course. We mean no disrespect, and we're not trying to cause an incident. We'll be through your space in approximately 6 hours at standard velocity. The human's image vanished from the screen. Vixrel stared at the blank display in disbelief. They had refused. Again. And then they had simply ended the conversation as if it were settled. Sir. His tactical officer spoke up. The human vessel is powering up its engines. They're beginning to move. Unbelievable, Vixral muttered. Tactical, deploy corvettes Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. Have them intercept and disable that vessel's engines. Use minimum force. I want that ship intact so we can tow it back here and teach these primitives a lesson about Imperial authority. Yes, sir. 3 Imperial corvettes detached from the checkpoint station, their sleek forms accelerating rapidly. Each corvette was 80 meters of cutting-edge Imperial technology. Energy weapons that could vaporize asteroids. Shields that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Engines that could accelerate at rates that would turn unprotected organic matter into paste. Against a primitive human vessel with chemical rockets and kinetic weapons, it would be no contest. Vixral watched on the tactical display as his corvettes closed the distance. The human ship maintained its course, not even attempting evasive maneuvers. Foolish. Or perhaps they simply didn't realize what was about to happen. Corvette Alpha reporting, his communications officer relayed. They are in weapons range. Preparing to disable engine section with precision plasma bursts. Authorized. Fire when ready. The tactical display showed 3 bright lances of energy leap from the corvettes. Standard procedure. Precise shots aimed at the engine section to disable propulsion, without destroying the vessel or killing the crew. The Empire was strict about unnecessary casualties. The energy beam struck the human ship and did absolutely nothing. Report. Vixral barked, sitting forward in his chair. Sir, the human vessel appears to be equipped with defensive screens. Our weapons fire was absorbed. Corvette Alpha reports no visible damage to the target. That's impossible. The report from the Eternal Vigilance made no mention of defensive screens. Increase power to maximum. Target the same section. Fire. 3 more lances of plasma, these ones significantly brighter, hammered into the human ship. Vixral could see the energy dispersion on his sensors. The shields were working, but barely. Primitive screens couldn't withstand Imperial weapons at full power. 1 more salvo should collapse them. Corvette Alpha is reporting a return power surge from the human vessel. The tactical officer said suddenly. Multiple signatures. Weapons lock detected. They're targeting our ships. Vixral laughed despite himself. Let them fire their kinetic weapons. Our shields will handle whatever primitive projectiles they can throw. Projectiles away from human vessel. Count as 3. Velocity is... Sir, this can't be right. What? Computer is reading projectile velocity at 0.4 times light speed. That can't be accurate. That would mean relativistic kinetics. Nothing can accelerate solid matter to that speed in combat. Time frames. Vixral opened his mouth to agree when 3 things happened simultaneously. The tactical display showed 3 of his corvettes suddenly light up with collision warnings. The communication system erupted with panicked voices, and the sensor officer made a sound that Vixral had never heard from her before. A sound of pure shock. Direct hits on all 3 corvettes, she managed to say. Alpha's shields didn't even register the impact. The projectile went straight through. Hull breach on 17 decks, their venting atmosphere. Beta took a glancing hit. Half their sensor array is gone. Gamma is trying to evade, but another hit. Their main reactor just went offline. Vixral stared at the display.
40 seconds.
The entire engagement had lasted 40 seconds. 3 Imperial corvettes, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, had been disabled by 3 shots from a primitive human vessel. Sir, the human ship is transmitting. Put it on screen, Vixral said quietly. Commander Webb appeared again. He looked genuinely apologetic. Commander Vixral, I'm truly sorry about this. We tried to avoid conflict. Your ships are disabled but intact. Casualties should be minimal if your damage control teams are competent. We're transmitting medical assistance protocols if you need them. We'll continue on our route now. Again, we apologize for the misunderstanding. Webb out, the screen went blank. The human ship accelerated smoothly away from the checkpoint, leaving 3 crippled corvettes in its wake. Vixral sat frozen in his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to organize rescue operations for the corvettes. But all he could think about was the impossible thing he had just witnessed. Relativistic kinetic weapons. Defensive screens that shrugged off full-power Imperial plasma weapons. A vessel that moved with precision and speed that belied its primitive fusion drives. None of it made sense. None of it matched the reports from first contact. Get me Admiral Thexvar, Vixral said finally. Priority 1 transmission. Tell him we have a significant problem. 3 sectors away, in the military headquarters of the Zarathian Fourth Fleet, Admiral Thexavar received the transmission during his morning briefing. He listened to Vixral's report in silence, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. When the report finished, he sat back in his chair and looked at his assembled officers. They all wore the same expression of disbelief. "Show me the sensor logs," Thexavar ordered. The holographic display in the center of the room lit up with data. Weapons velocities, energy absorption rates, impact analysis. Thexavar was a career military officer with 70 cycles of experience. He had fought in 3 major wars and countless minor skirmishes. He knew weapons technology inside and out. What he was looking at shouldn't exist. "Analysis," he said to his chief science officer. The science officer, an elderly Zarathian named Pelkor, manipulated the holographic display, pulling out specific data points. The projectiles were tungsten carbide, Admiral. Simple metallic slugs, nothing exotic, but the velocities recorded are accurate. These weapons use some form of accelerator that can push solid matter to 40% light speed. The kinetic energy involved is staggering. A single projectile has more destructive potential than our largest plasma cannon. How are they accelerating them? Thexavar demanded. Unknown. The acceleration takes place inside the vessel. We have no sensor data on the mechanism. But Admiral, this is the less concerning part. Go on. The defensive screens. They're not operating on any principle we recognize. They're not deflecting energy. They're not dispersing it. They appear to be absorbing it and then dissipating it through the hull structure itself. The entire ship's hull seems to be part of the defensive system. And the hull density readings. Admiral, if these sensor readings are accurate, that ship's hull is denser than neutronium. That's impossible. Yes, sir. It should be. But the readings don't lie. Somehow these humans have found a way to compress matter beyond what we thought possible. Their ship isn't just protected by dense armor. Their ship is dense armor with engines and weapons attached. Thexavar stood and walked to the holographic display, studying the rotating image of the human vessel. It looked so small, so insignificant, yet it had disabled 3 Imperial corvettes in less than a minute. What happened to that colony ship? The Endeavor, he asked. Checking, sir. According to our tracking data, it arrived at its destination, a system the humans call New Terra, approximately 2 months ago. They've established a colony there and begun construction of orbital facilities. And their home system, Earth? We haven't located it yet, sir. The humans have been very careful not to reveal its location. We're working on tracking their FTL signatures, but they don't use the same FTL technology we do. Their jump signatures are unique, difficult to track. Thexavar made a decision. Assemble Battle Squadron Krev, 25 warships, 2 dreadnoughts. I want destroyers, cruisers, and full support vessels. We're going to this New Terra system. Sir? Pelkor looked concerned. That seems like an extreme response to a single incident. A single incident? Thexavar turned to face his science officer. Pelkor, think about what we just witnessed. A primitive species, one that we assumed was barely capable of interstellar travel, just disabled 3 of our corvettes with weapons technology we don't understand, and defensive systems we can't explain. If they have one ship like this, they have more. We need to show them unequivocally what happens when you challenge the Empire. And if they have many ships like this, then we'll destroy them all. We are the Zarathian Empire. We have ruled this region of space for 12,000 years. We are not going to be humiliated by primitives who only just learned to leave their home system. Assemble the battle squadron. We move in 3 days. Pelkor bowed and left to carry out the orders. Thexavar remained standing in front of the holographic display, studying the image of the UNS Defiant. Humans. They had seemed so weak during first contact. So primitive. Commander Veshik's report had dismissed them as insignificant. But that was 6 months ago. What had changed in 6 months? Or had nothing changed at all? Had the humans been hiding their true capabilities from the start? Had that colony ship been a test to see how the Empire would react? Thexavar didn't know. But he was going to find out. And if these humans thought they could build a few impressive warships and challenge Imperial authority, they were about to learn a very painful lesson. The Empire had not maintained order for 12,000 years by accepting challenges to its authority. Species that refused to submit learned what happened to those who defied the established order. Thexavar began composing his formal report to the Imperial High Command. They needed to know what was happening. But more importantly, he needed authorization to do whatever was necessary to bring these humans to heal. One way or another, humanity was about to learn its place in the galaxy. Battle Squadron Krev dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Terra system in a display of overwhelming force. 50 Imperial warships materialized in perfect formation. 2 dreadnoughts, each one 3 kilometers of devastating firepower, formed the center of the formation. Around them, cruisers and destroyers arranged themselves in a battlesphere that had been refined over 10,000 years of warfare. Support vessels hung back, ready to provide repairs and reinforcements. Admiral Thexral stood on the command deck of his flagship, the dreadnought Infinite Dominion, and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This was power. This was what happened when you challenged the Empire. You got to watch 50 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy arrive at your doorstep. Sensor sweep, he ordered. Conducting full system scan now, his sensor officer reported. Detecting the human colony on the 4th planet. Orbital structures present. Multiple fusion reactors on the surface and in orbit. Also detecting. Admiral, we have contacts. Multiple vessels. 12 signatures at marker positions around the system. Display them. The holographic tactical display materialized in front of Thexral. 12 human vessels, arranged in a loose formation between the Imperial Squadron and the inner system. Each one was similar in size to the ship that had disabled the corvettes at checkpoint Helix 9, 400 meters. Sleek design, and positioned with what looked like deliberate precision, 12 ships against 50. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Analysis of those vessels? Thexral asked. His science officer Pelcor manipulated the sensor data. Configuration matches the UNS Defiant. Same unusual hull density readings. Same indications of high output power generation. Admiral, these appear to be dedicated warships, not converted civilian vessels. Weapons? Unable to determine. No visible weapon ports, but the same was true of the Defiant. Thexral studied the formation. 12 ships. Humans had built at least 12 warships in the 6 months since first contact. That was faster than he had anticipated. It suggested they had shipbuilding capabilities that exceeded what their technology level should allow. No matter. 12 ships could not stand against 50. Communications hail them. Let us make this very clear. The communications channel opened and a face appeared on the main screen. Thexral recognized her immediately from the reports. Captain Sarah Chen, the woman who had refused Imperial protection during first contact. Except she wasn't a captain anymore, apparently. The insignia on her uniform indicated admiral rank. Admiral Chen, Thexral said, putting emphasis on her rank that made it clear he found it pretentious. I am Admiral Thexral of the Zarathian Imperial Fleet. As you can see, I have brought sufficient force to address the situation that has developed. Admiral Thexral, Chen replied pleasantly. Welcome to New Terra. What situation would that be? Her calm tone irritated him. She should be panicking. She should be seeing those 50 warships and realizing how completely outmatched she was. The situation where your species has refused Imperial protection, attacked Imperial vessels, and generally demonstrated a complete lack of understanding regarding the established order of this region of space. This ends now. Chen's expression didn't change. Admiral, the incident at checkpoint Helix 9 was defensive in nature. Your ships attempted to board one of our vessels without permission. We disabled them without destroying them and offered medical assistance. Hardly an attack. You fired on Imperial vessels. That is an act of war. We defended ourselves from an attempt to violate our sovereignty. That's not an act of war. That's an act of self-defense. Thexral felt his crest rise in frustration. This human was being deliberately obtuse. Time to make things crystal clear. Admiral Chen, I am going to explain this once, and I suggest you listen very carefully. The Zarathian Empire has maintained order in this region for 12,000 of your years. We have done so through a combination of fair governance and overwhelming military force. When we offer protection to a species, it is not a suggestion. It is an inevitability. You can accept peacefully, or you can resist and be brought into compliance through force. The choice is yours. And if we prefer independence? Chen asked. Then you will be made an example of what happens to species that refuse to acknowledge reality. There was a pause. Chen seemed to be considering something. Then she nodded slowly. Admiral Thexral, before we go any further, I'd like to explain something to you. You've made assumptions about humanity based on limited information. You see fusion drives and assume we're primitive. You see colony ships and assume we're weak. You see small numbers and assume we're insignificant. I'd like to correct those assumptions. There is nothing to explain, Thexerol said dismissively. You have 12 ships. I have 50. Your weapons, while admittedly impressive in their crude efficiency, cannot overcome such numerical superiority. Mathematics is not negotiable. You're absolutely right, Chen agreed. Mathematics isn't negotiable. So let me give you some numbers. 400 years ago, humanity developed fusion power. We tried for centuries to crack faster than light travel. We failed. We're still not very good at it, honestly. Our FTL drives are slow, inefficient, and unreliable compared to yours. Then you should have accepted our offer of technology, Thexerol said. Please let me finish. Because we couldn't solve FTL travel, we were stuck in our solar system. For 400 years, Admiral, an entire species trapped in one star system. Do you know what humans do when they're trapped? We work, we build. We solve every other problem we can find. She pulled up a display on her end that showed on Thexerol's screen. Chemical formulas, molecular structures, engineering diagrams. We perfected materials science. We learned to compress matter at the molecular level, creating alloys that are denser and stronger than anything nature produces naturally. We perfected fusion power to the point where our reactors produce 40 times the output of anything at our theoretical technology level. We developed antimatter production and storage to levels that would make your scientists weep with envy. We built manufacturing systems that can construct a warship from raw materials in 30 days. Thexerol waved a hand dismissively. Impressive boasting. But boasts do not win battles. No, Chen agreed. They don't. Let me tell you what wins battles, Admiral. Superior engineering. Humanity spent 4 centuries stuck in one system, so we made sure that when we finally did leave, we would never be at anyone's mercy. Our ships don't have shields like yours. We don't deflect energy weapons. Our hulls just absorb them. They're designed to. Every square centimeter of hull plating is compressed matter alloy that can withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Energy weapons? They just heat up the hull a little. And your weapons? Thexerol asked, despite himself growing curious about where this was going. Remarkably simple. Mass accelerators. We take tungsten carbide slugs and accelerate them to relativistic velocities, using a combination of electromagnetic fields and gravity manipulation. No complex energy matrices. No plasma containment. Just matter moving very, very fast. Each projectile hits with enough kinetic energy to crack a planet if we aimed it at the surface. Your shields are designed to deflect or absorb energy weapons. They're not designed for relativistic kinetic impacts. She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. Here's the thing, Admiral. You see 12 ships and think you have overwhelming numerical superiority. But you're thinking in terms of traditional warfare. Energy weapons, shields, electronic warfare. We don't fight that way. We fight the way humans have always fought, with better tools used more efficiently. Enough talk, Thexerol said, his patience exhausted. You have one final chance. Power down your vessels and submit to Imperial authority, or I will destroy every ship you have and then bombard your colony until you surrender. Choose now, Chen sighed. I was hoping we could avoid this. Admiral, I'm going to strongly recommend that you withdraw from this system. You don't want to do this. Is that a threat? It's a warning. There's a difference. Thexerol had heard enough. All ships, power weapons. Target the human vessels. Prepare to fire on my command. 50 Imperial warships activated their weapon systems simultaneously. The space around them lit up with energy signatures as plasma cannons, particle beams, and missile launchers came online. It was a display of power that had made hundreds of species submit over the millennia. Admiral Chen just looked sad. Fire, Thexerol commanded. 50 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of energy beams and missiles streaked across the space between the two fleets. It was enough firepower to vaporize an entire city, enough to crack the crust of a small moon. The 12 human ships just sat there and took it. The energy weapons splashed across their hulls like water against stone. The missiles detonated against their armor and accomplished nothing. Thexerol watched in disbelief as the barrage continued for a full minute, and at the end of it not a single human ship showed damage. Cease fire, he said quietly. Pelcor analysis. His science officer was already working frantically at his station. Sir, their hulls are absorbing the energy and distributing it throughout the ship's structure. The material composition is unlike anything in our database. The density is approximately 30 times normal neutronium. They're not using shields. They don't need shields. Their ships are essentially solid blocks of the densest matter we've ever encountered, with engines and weapons somehow integrated into the structure. That's impossible. Ships that dense couldn't maneuver. They'd be too massive. They're using some form of internal gravity manipulation. They're offsetting their own mass somehow. Sir, this is technology we don't have. We can't build ships like this. On the screen, Admiral Chen hadn't moved. She just waited patiently while 50 Imperial ships finished demonstrating their complete inability to harm her vessels. Your turn? She asked quietly. All ships evasive maneuvers. Thexrel shouted. Maximum thrust! The 12 human ships opened fire. Unlike the sustained barrage from the Imperial fleet, the human attack was brief. 12 ships, 3 projectiles each. 36 shots total. Each one a tungsten carbide slug accelerated to 40% of light speed. The Imperial ships scattered, their pilots desperately trying to evade. But you couldn't dodge something moving that fast. Thexrel watched on the tactical display as 36 bright contacts crossed the distance between fleets in less than 2 seconds. 3 cruisers simply ceased to exist. Direct hits to their main reactors at relativistic speeds. The kinetic energy was so enormous that the ships didn't explode so much as they vaporized. 5 more cruisers took glancing blows. Shields collapsed instantly. Hull plating tore away like paper. Internal explosions ripped through multiple decks. 2 destroyers had their engine sections completely severed from the main hull. They tumbled through space, venting atmosphere and debris. One of the dreadnoughts, the inevitable Victory, took a direct hit to its forward section. The entire front third of the ship, including the main bridge, was simply gone. The ship continued forward on momentum, now nothing more than a dead hulk in space. 8 ships. The humans had disabled or destroyed 8 Imperial vessels with a single volley. The engagement had lasted perhaps 8 seconds from the first shot to the last impact. Thexrel stood frozen on his bridge, staring at the tactical display. Around him, damage reports flooded in. Casualty numbers scrolled across screens. His mighty battle squadron, pride of the Imperial fleet, had just been bloodied in less time than it took to give a proper order. Admiral? Chen's voice came from the communication system. I'm truly sorry, but you were warned. Now I'm going to give you the same chance you gave us. Power down your weapons and withdraw from this system, or we'll be forced to continue defending ourselves. Thexrel wanted to refuse, wanted to order another attack, wanted to do anything except admit that he had been wrong, that these humans were not the primitives he had assumed. But he was also a practical military officer who understood mathematics. He had started with 50 ships. Now he had 42 functional vessels. The humans had 12 ships and had taken 0 damage. If this fight continued, he would lose. Simple mathematics, as he had said earlier. All ships, he said quietly. Power down weapons. Begin rescue operations for damaged vessels. Prepare for system evacuation. He looked at Admiral Chen on the screen. Her expression was sympathetic but firm. For what it's worth, Admiral, we don't want to be your enemies. We just want to be left alone to build our civilization on our own terms. Is that really so unreasonable? Thexrel didn't answer. He simply terminated the communication and turned to his remaining officers. Begin immediate withdrawal. Get every survivor we can off those damaged ships. As soon as rescue operations are complete, we jump out of this system. And someone get me a direct channel to Imperial High Command. They need to know what we're facing. As his fleet began the humiliating process of retreating from a battle against a numerically inferior force, Thexrel replayed the engagement in his mind. 8 seconds. That's how long it had taken for his assumptions about humanity to be completely shattered. These were not primitives stumbling into a galaxy they didn't understand. These were warriors who had spent 4 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. They had built ships that couldn't be destroyed by conventional weapons. They had built weapons that could destroy anything. The question now was not whether humanity could challenge the Empire. The question was whether the Empire could survive an actual war with humanity. Because if those 12 ships were just the beginning, if the humans could build ships like this in the quantities that the Empire could build standard vessels, then the Zarathian Empire had a much bigger problem than it realized. Thexrel sat down heavily in his command chair and began composing his report. The High Command was not going to like what he had to tell them. But they needed to know the truth. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and they had brought weapons that made the Empire's 12,000-year military advantage obsolete. The galaxy was about to change whether the Empire liked it or not. The Imperial Palace on Zarath Prime had stood for 8,000 years. Its crystalline spires reached toward the sky, each one a monument to the Empire's enduring power. Inside the Grand Council chamber, Empress Califara the Eternal sat upon the throne of ages, her iridescent scales catching the light from the massive windows that overlooked the capital city. She was old, even by Zarathian standards, 240 cycles. She had ruled for 170 of those cycles, guiding the Empire through periods of expansion, consolidation, and peace. She had seen wars come and go. She had watched species rise to prominence and fade into obscurity. But she had never seen her military commanders look as worried as they did right now. Admiral Thexeral stood before the throne, his bearing stiff and formal despite the clear discomfort in his eyes. Around him, the other members of the War Council sat in their designated positions. Fleet Admiral Kesavara, commander of the Empire's First Fleet; General Nexthal, head of ground forces; Science Director Pelkor, looking smaller and older than usual; and Intelligence Director Vixisha, her three eyes focused intently on the holographic display that showed the battle at New Terra. "Play it again," the Empress said quietly. For the 5th time, the Council watched the engagement, 50 Imperial warships firing everything they had at 12 human vessels, the energy weapons splashing uselessly against impossible armor. Then the human response. 36 shots, 8 ships destroyed or disabled. 8 seconds of combat that changed everything. When it finished, silence filled the chamber. "Explanations," Califara said. "Simple ones. How did a species we encountered 6 months ago build ships that our weapons cannot harm?" Science Director Pelkor rose from his seat, manipulating the holographic display to show detailed scans of human vessels. "Majesty, we made incorrect assumptions based on incomplete data. When we first encountered the humans, we observed their colony ship using fusion drives. We assumed this meant they were at a primitive stage of development. This was wrong. Obviously," the Empress said dryly. "Continue." "The humans have a different technological development path than any species we've encountered. Most species develop faster than light travel relatively early, and then expand outward, developing other technologies as needed. The humans could not solve FTL travel. They were trapped in their home system for 4 centuries while they possessed fusion power and the beginnings of antimatter. Manipulation, Pelkor, changed the display to show complex molecular structures, so they focused on everything else. Material science, manufacturing, power generation, weapon systems. They pushed every other technological avenue to its absolute limit. The result is ships that operate on principles we understand theoretically, but have never successfully implemented practically." "Explain these principles," Califara ordered. "Their hulls use compressed matter technology. They have found a way to alter the molecular bonding structure of metals and alloys at a fundamental level, creating materials that are approximately 30 times denser than neutronium, while somehow maintaining structural integrity. We have theorized about such materials for centuries, but never successfully created them in useful quantities. The humans are building entire warships from it." Fleet Admiral Kesavara leaned forward. "But ships that dense should be impossible to move. The mass would be too great." "They use internal gravity manipulation," Pelkor explained. "Each human warship contains multiple gravity generators that partially offset the ship's mass. It's not true mass reduction, more like selective gravity cancellation. Theoretically brilliant. Practically, we wouldn't know where to begin replicating it." "And their weapons?" General Nexthal asked. "Relativistic kinetics. We abandoned that approach millennia ago, because we developed better alternatives," Pelkor said. "Energy weapons are more efficient, easier to maintain, and don't require storing massive amounts of physical ammunition. But the humans took kinetic weapons and perfected them beyond what we thought possible. Their mass accelerators use a combination of electromagnetic fields and gravity manipulation to accelerate solid projectiles to 40% light speed in a distance of less than 100 meters. The energy requirements alone should be impossible, but their power generation systems are far more advanced than ours." Califara listened to all of this with growing concern. "So they cannot travel quickly between stars, but they have perfected every other aspect of space warfare to a degree that makes them superior to us in direct combat?" In certain aspects, yes, Majesty, Pellicor admitted. Their ships are slower at FTL speeds. Their sensors are less sophisticated. Their computer systems are more primitive. But in terms of raw combat capability, their vessels are superior to ours in almost every measurable way. How many ships do they have? The Empress asked. Intelligence Director Vixishaw stood, her expression grim. That is the question that concerns me most, Majesty. We have confirmed sightings of at least 150 human warships, possibly more. Our intelligence assets have reported massive orbital shipyards around their home system, which we still have not located, and around New Terra. They are producing warships at a rate that should not be possible. 150 ships, Califara repeated. And they built these in 6 months? We believe they began construction earlier. The colony ship Endeavor was likely a test to gauge our reaction. They were already building a fleet before first contact occurred. But yes, Majesty, their construction rate is approximately 1 warship every 36 hours, possibly faster. The council chamber fell silent again as everyone absorbed that information. The Empire could build ships faster than that, but not warships of such capability. The humans were somehow mass-producing vessels that were individually superior to anything the Empire fielded. If we went to war, Califara said slowly, if we committed to total war against humanity with no restrictions, what would be the outcome? Fleet Admiral Kesavara stood. Majesty, I have run simulations based on the available data. To guarantee victory against an enemy with 150 vessels of this capability, we would need to commit approximately 60% of the Imperial fleet. That's 3,000 warships. The casualties would be catastrophic. We estimate losing 40 to 50% of that force. Perhaps 1,500 ships destroyed. Millions of casualties. And if we waited? The Empress asked. If we gave them time to build more ships? Then the odds shift further in their favor. If they continue their current production rate, within 1 year they will have ships numbering in the thousands. Within 2 years they could potentially match our entire fleet in numbers, while maintaining their technological advantage. At that point, Majesty, a war would be unwinnable. Califara stood from her throne and walked to the great window overlooking her capital. Millions of Zerathians went about their lives down there, unaware that the foundation of their 12,000-year-old empire was being questioned in this chamber. Options, she said. Give me options. General Nexthal spoke up. Strike now with overwhelming force. Yes, we will take heavy casualties, but we can still win if we commit fully. Delay only makes them stronger. That assumes we can find their homeworld, Vixisha pointed out. We still don't know where Earth is. They've been very careful to avoid revealing its location. We could strike at New Terra and any other colonies we find. But if we cannot locate their industrial base, we cannot win a war of production. What about biological or chemical weapons? Another council member suggested. We have never used such weapons against species capable of retaliation. But if the situation is dire enough, no, Califara said firmly. We are not barbarians. We do not commit genocide, no matter how convenient it might be. The Empire's strength has always been in our principles as much as our military might. I will not throw away 12,000 years of civilization because we encountered a species that proved better at building warships than we are. She turned back to face the council. What do we know about human intentions? Are they expansionist? Do they seek to conquer us? Admiral Thexrel, who had remained quiet throughout most of the discussion, finally spoke. Majesty, in my interactions with Admiral Chen, she made it clear that humanity desires independence, not conquest. They want to build their own civilization without interference. They attacked only when we attempted to force them to submit. They also showed restraint, Vixisha added. At Checkpoint Helix 9, they disabled our corvettes but did not destroy them. At New Terra, they could have annihilated Admiral Thexrel's entire force but instead only destroyed enough ships to prove their point. A truly aggressive species would have pressed their advantage. Pellicor nodded. Their behavior is consistent with a defensive posture, not an offensive one. They appear to be following a doctrine of deterrence rather than conquest. Califara considered this. So we have a species that does not want war but is fully prepared for it. A species that will defend itself with overwhelming force if threatened, but shows restraint when possible. Is that an accurate assessment? Yes, Majesty, Thexrel confirmed. Then perhaps, Califara said slowly, we should consider an alternative approach. What if instead of viewing humanity as a threat to be eliminated, we viewed them as a potential partner? The War Council looked at each other in surprise. Fleet Admiral Kesavara was the first to speak. Majesty, they refuse to become a protectorate. They have made it clear they will not submit to imperial authority. I did not suggest making them submit, Kalifara said. I suggested partnership. True partnership. Not vassalage disguised as protection. We have something they need, our FTL technology, and they have something we need, their materials science and manufacturing techniques. What if we negotiated a genuine treaty between equals? The Empire has never recognized another species as equal, General Nexthal said carefully. Then perhaps it is time we did, Kalifara replied. Think about what Director Pelcor has told us. The humans have achieved things we thought impossible. If we could combine their engineering capabilities with our scientific knowledge and faster-than-light travel, both our civilizations would benefit enormously. More importantly, it would secure peace without the catastrophic casualties of a war we are not certain we would win. She looked around the chamber at her advisors. The Empire has endured for 12,000 years because we have been pragmatic as well as powerful. We have adapted to changing circumstances. We have incorporated useful technologies from other species. We have recognized when to fight and when to negotiate. This is one of those moments. The other council members will resist, Vixishaw warned. Many will see negotiation as weakness. They will demand we crush this upstart species before they become too powerful to contain. Then we will deal with their objections, Kalifara said firmly. But I am Empress and I have made my decision. We will pursue diplomatic contact with humanity. We will offer a genuine treaty of mutual benefit and mutual respect. And if they refuse or if this proves to be a mistake, we can always resort to military options later. But I will not commit millions of Imperial citizens to a war that might be unnecessary, simply because our pride was wounded. She returned to her throne and sat down. Admiral Thexerol, you have had the most contact with human leadership. I am assigning you as head of our diplomatic mission. You will travel to New Terra and establish formal negotiations with this Admiral Chen. You will offer a treaty of equals, technology exchange, mutual defense, and formal recognition of human sovereignty. Make it clear that we are not offering them servitude but genuine partnership. Thexerol bowed deeply. Yes, Majesty. Though I should note that I threatened to destroy them less than a week ago. I may not be the ideal choice for diplomacy. You are exactly the right choice, Kalifara said. You have seen what they can do. You understand the stakes, and you have shown wisdom in reporting accurately, rather than trying to hide the defeat. The humans will respect honesty more than they would respect false flattery from someone who has not witnessed their capabilities firsthand. She stood again, signaling the end of the council session. We stand at a crossroads. Down one path lies a war that will cost us dearly even if we win. Down the other lies the possibility of a partnership that could benefit both our species for millennia to come. I choose the second path. I expect all of you to support this decision. The council members rose and bowed. As they filed out of the chamber, Pelcor approached the Empress privately. A wise decision, Majesty, he said quietly, though I must point out one additional concern. If we share our FTL technology with the humans and they apply their engineering philosophy to it, they will build FTL drives that are faster and more efficient than ours, Kalifara finished. Yes, I am aware of that risk, but consider the alternative. If we fight them and lose, they will eventually reverse engineer our FTL technology anyway, and we will have gained nothing but casualties and enemies. If we partner with them willingly, at least we will have allies and access to their capabilities in return. And if the partnership fails, then we will have tried. The Empire was built by those brave enough to take calculated risks. This is such a risk. The humans have proven they are not primitives to be conquered. Let us see if they can prove to be partners worth having. As Pelcor left the chamber, Kalifara looked out once more over her capital, somewhere out there beyond the borders of the Empire. Humans were building more of their impossible warships, ships that could challenge the Empire's millennium of military dominance, ships built by a species that refused to be anyone's subjects. For 12,000 years, the Empire had been the dominant power in this region of space. That era might be ending, but perhaps if she handled this correctly, what came next could be even better. An alliance between Zarathian knowledge and human engineering, between imperial wisdom and human innovation, or it could all go horribly wrong. But that was the nature of leadership. Making the hard choices and living with the consequences, Kalifara returned to her throne and began preparing the formal treaty documents. In 3 days, Admiral Thexral would carry them to New Terra. In 3 days, they would find out if humanity was willing to be a partner, or if war was inevitable. The fate of billions rested on that conversation. The diplomatic station hung in neutral space exactly halfway between New Terra and the nearest Imperial system. It was a simple structure, built by human engineering teams in less than a week. Modular construction, dense hull plating, artificial gravity generators, everything designed for function rather than beauty. Ambassador Kelthor of the Zarathian Empire stepped off his shuttle and onto the station's docking platform. He was older than most diplomats, his scales showing the pale coloring that came with advanced age. He had served the Empire for 90 cycles, negotiating treaties with dozens of species. He had seen proud warrior cultures brought low. He had watched primitive species beg for Imperial protection. He had crafted agreements that brought entire sectors under Imperial control. This assignment was different. Kelthor carried with him a diplomatic pouch, containing something unprecedented in Imperial history. A treaty between equals, not a protectorate agreement. Not a vassalage contract, an actual treaty recognizing another species as having equal status. With the Empire, the fact that such a document existed at all told him everything he needed to know about how seriously the Empress was taking the human situation. 2 human guards met him at the airlock. They wore simple uniforms, no armor, and carried weapons that looked disturbingly efficient. Kelthor had read the intelligence reports. Those weapons fired miniaturized versions of the relativistic projectiles their warships used. A single shot could punch through Imperial body armor as if it weren't there. Ambassador Kelthor, one of the guards said politely, "Welcome to Diplomatic Station Hope. Admiral Chen is waiting for you in the conference chamber. If you'll follow us, please." The interior of the station was functional but not uncomfortable. Humans clearly preferred efficiency over aesthetics, but they understood the basics of diplomatic courtesy. The conference chamber was well lit, with seating arranged in a circular pattern rather than the traditional adversarial table setup. A gesture meant to emphasize equality rather than negotiation from positions of power. Admiral Sarah Chen stood as Kelthor entered. She wore her uniform but no weapons. Around her sat several other humans, some military, some clearly civilian advisors. Kelthor had brought a smaller delegation, just himself and his senior aide. The Empress had been clear. This was not a negotiation where overwhelming the other side with numbers would help. "Ambassador Kelthor," Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Kelthor had studied human customs during the 3-day journey.
He took her hand and shook it gently.
Her grip was firm but not aggressive. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." They all took their seats. For a moment, there was an awkward silence. Kelthor was used to species being intimidated by Imperial diplomats. The humans just looked curious and slightly wary. "I should begin," Kelthor said carefully, "by acknowledging that our previous interactions have not been ideal. The Empire approached humanity with assumptions that proved incorrect. For that, I offer the Empress's apologies." Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's appreciated. Not what I expected to hear, honestly. The Empress has reviewed all available information and concluded that the Empire made errors in judgment. We assumed that technological development in one area predicted development in all areas. We were wrong. We also assumed that because your species was small in numbers, you were insignificant. We were wrong about that as well." Kelthor pulled the diplomatic pouch from his case and placed it on the table between them. "The Empress has sent me with a proposal. But before I present it, I have a question I must ask. What does humanity want? Not just independence, though I understand that is important to you. What are your goals? Your long-term intentions?" Chen glanced at her advisors, then back at Kelthor. "That's a fair question. Humanity's goals are relatively simple. We want to expand. Not through conquest, but through colonization of uninhabited systems. We want to build a civilization that reflects our values: freedom, innovation, and cooperation. We want to make contact with other species and establish peaceful relations. And yes, we want to do all of this on our own terms, not as subjects of an empire we had no say in joining." "And if the Empire were to recognize those goals?" Kelthor asked. "If we were to offer genuine partnership rather than vassalage?" "We'd be interested," Chen said carefully. "But we'd need to understand what you mean by partnership. The last time your people offered us something, it came with strings that made it unacceptable." Kelthor nodded and opened the diplomatic pouch. Inside were data crystals containing the treaty documents, but also something else. A personal message crystal from Empress Califara herself. He activated it, and a holographic image of the Empress appeared above the table. Admiral Chen and representatives of humanity, the Empress's recorded voice said, "I am Califara, Empress of the Zarathian Empire. I send this message to acknowledge a simple truth. We underestimated you. We looked at your ships and saw primitives. We looked at your numbers and saw weakness. We were wrong on all counts." The humans watched the hologram with interest. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. "You have proven," the Empress continued, "that there are multiple paths to power, and that the path the Empire chose is not the only valid one. You have shown restraint when you could have pressed your advantage. You have defended yourselves without seeking to destroy us. These are the actions of a mature civilization, not the primitives we assumed you to be. Therefore, I extend an offer unprecedented in Imperial history. An alliance of equals, a true partnership between the Zarathian Empire and humanity." The hologram flickered and changed, showing technical diagrams and proposals. "We offer full access to Imperial faster-than-light technology. Our sensor networks. Our scientific databases. In return, we ask for access to your materials science, manufacturing techniques, and power generation systems. We propose mutual defense agreements, joint research programs, and coordinated colonization efforts to avoid territorial conflicts. Most importantly, we offer recognition of human sovereignty. You will not be subjects. You will be partners." The hologram returned to showing the Empress, "I understand that you have no reason to trust us. We came to you with demands, and you met those demands with justified force. But I am asking you to look past those initial failures and see the possibility of what our civilizations could accomplish together. The galaxy is vast, Admiral Chen. There are threats out there that neither of us has yet encountered. There are wonders to discover and challenges to overcome. We could face them as adversaries, wasting resources fighting each other, or we could face them as allies, combining our strengths to the benefit of both our peoples." The message ended and the hologram vanished. Kelthor watched the humans' reactions carefully. They were conferring quietly among themselves. Chen seemed to be listening to her advisors before making any response. Finally, she turned back to Kelthor. "That's a generous offer. Suspiciously generous, some would say. What's the catch?" "There is no catch," Kelthor said honestly. "Though I will be frank about the Empire's motivations. We ran projections. A full-scale war with humanity would cost us dearly even if we won. Your production capabilities are extraordinary. You are currently building approximately 1 warship every day and a half. Within a year, you could field a fleet that rivals ours in size while maintaining your technological advantages. The Empire could win such a war, but the cost would be catastrophic. So this is motivated by fear," one of Chen's advisors said. "A civilian," Kelthor noted. "Motivated by pragmatism," Kelthor corrected. "The Empress could have ordered an immediate total war. She chose not to, not because the Empire is weak, but because she is wise enough to recognize when cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict. You have something we need. We have something you need. Why should millions die when both sides could prosper through partnership?" Chen leaned back in her chair, studying Kelthor carefully. "You're being very honest about your position." "That's unexpected. Lying would be pointless," Kelthor said. "Your intelligence services are undoubtedly aware of the troop movements and fleet reorganizations happening within Imperial space. You know we were preparing for potential war. You also know we have now halted those preparations pending the outcome of these negotiations. Honesty seems the best approach when the other side already knows most of the truth anyway." Chen smiled slightly at that. "Fair point. All right, Ambassador, let me be equally honest. You're right about our production capabilities. We currently have 823 warships operational. By this time next year we'll have over 3,000. By the year after that, probably 10,000. Kelthor felt his breathing membranes flutter involuntarily. 10,000 ships. The Empire's entire fleet numbered approximately 5,000 vessels. But here's the thing, Chen continued. We don't want to build 10,000 warships. Do you know how much resources that takes? How many people we have to dedicate to military production instead of building colonies, science stations, and hospitals? Building weapons is expensive and ultimately wasteful. We did it because we had to. Because we knew that when we finally left our solar system, we'd encounter species like yours who would see us as either subjects or threats. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Humanity spent 400 years trapped in one star system, Ambassador. 400 years working on engineering problems while dreaming about what was out there. We built weapons because we weren't naive. We knew the galaxy probably wasn't friendly. But weapons aren't what we want to build. We want to build homes. We want to explore. We want to learn. We want to meet other species and share knowledge and culture. She turned back to face Kelthor. So yes, we're interested in your offer. But we need guarantees, real ones, not just pretty words in a treaty that you'll ignore when it's convenient. What guarantees do you require? Kelthor asked. One of Chen's advisors, a man with gray hair and sharp eyes, spoke up. First, absolute sovereignty. No imperial governors. No imperial oversight. No imperial laws applied to human space. We govern ourselves completely. Agreed, Kelthor said immediately. Second, another advisor said, any technology exchange must be complete and unrestricted. We're not interested in partial access or versions that have been deliberately limited. Agreed. The Empress anticipated that concern. All technology sharing will be complete, including manufacturing specifications and theoretical foundations. Third, Chen said, mutual defense means exactly that, mutual. If the Empire is threatened, we'll help defend you. But if humanity is threatened, the Empire responds with the same level of commitment, not token support. Full commitment, Kelthor hesitated. That was a significant ask. It meant the Empire would be obligated to defend human interests with the same vigor it defended its own. But looking at the determination in Chen's eyes, he understood this was non-negotiable. I will need to consult with the Empress on the specific language, Kelthor said carefully, but I believe this is acceptable in principle. The Empress views this as a true alliance, not a convenient arrangement. True allies defend each other. Fourth, the gray-haired advisor said, joint command structure for any military operations involving both our forces. Neither side has automatic authority over the other. Decisions are made cooperatively. Acceptable, Kelthor agreed, though this will require detailed protocols to be worked out. And finally, Chen said, expansion rights. Humanity will continue to colonize uninhabited systems. We will not encroach on imperial territory, but we will not accept restrictions on where we can establish colonies in unclaimed space. We've identified approximately 200 systems within 1,000 light-years of Earth that are suitable for colonization. We intend to settle them. Kelthor pulled up a holographic star map. Show me these systems. Chen interfaced with the display and 200 markers appeared on the map. Kelthor studied them carefully. None were in imperial territory. Several were in regions the Empire had explored but never bothered to colonize. A few were in areas the Empire had claimed but never actually occupied. Most of these are acceptable, Kelthor said. However, Systems 17, 23, and 44 are currently claimed by the Empire. We would need to negotiate those specifically. We can discuss those individually, Chen agreed, but the principle stands. We need room to grow. Kelthor sat back and looked at the humans around the table. They were negotiating from a position of strength, but they weren't being unreasonable. Everything they asked for was logical and fair. The Empire would retain its sovereignty. Humanity would gain theirs. Both would benefit from shared technology and mutual defense. I believe we have the foundation for an agreement, Kelthor said. But I have a question. Why show restraint? You clearly have the military capability to expand aggressively. You could take whatever you wanted. Why negotiate at all? Chen returned to her seat. Because that's not who we are, Ambassador. Humanity has a long and often ugly history. We've fought countless wars among ourselves. We've committed atrocities. We've nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. But we learned. We learned that peace is harder than war but infinitely more valuable. We learned that cooperation achieves more than conquest. We learned that the strongest civilizations are built on principles, not just power. She leaned forward. We built ships that can't be destroyed because we never want to be at anyone's mercy. But we don't want to be conquerors either. We want to be neighbors, partners, friends if possible. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, Ambassador. There's no reason we can't share it peacefully. Kelthor felt something shift in his understanding. He had come here expecting to negotiate with warriors drunk on their newfound military superiority. Instead, he found philosophers who happened to be very good at building weapons. The Empress had been right to pursue this path. Then let us formalize this agreement, Kelthor said. I will need approximately 3 days to consult with the Empress on the final details. But I believe we have reached an understanding that will satisfy both our peoples. Agreed, Chen said. 3 days. We'll work on the detailed technical specifications for the technology exchanges during that time. They stood and shook hands again. As Kelthor prepared to leave, Chen stopped him with a question. Ambassador, can I ask you something? What did you think when you first saw the battle reports from New Terra? Kelthor considered the question carefully. I thought, the galaxy is about to change, and I was right. But perhaps not in the way I initially feared. And now? Now I think that perhaps the change will be for the better. The Empire has been dominant for so long that we had become complacent. You have reminded us that power comes in many forms and that there is always room for improvement. I believe this partnership will strengthen both our civilizations. Chen smiled. I hope you're right, Ambassador. I really do. 3 days later, the treaty was signed. Full documentation was transmitted to both governments. Celebrations erupted in human colonies across settled space. In the imperial capital, the response was more mixed. Many celebrated the alliance. Others grumbled about the Empire showing weakness. But Empress Califara stood firm. She addressed the Empire in a broadcast transmitted across every imperial world. For 12,000 years, she said, the Empire has maintained order through a combination of wisdom and strength. Today, we demonstrate that wisdom once again. Humanity represents something new in the galaxy. A species that achieved through focused determination what we achieved through time and natural progression. They are not our subjects. They are our partners. And together, we will face whatever challenges the galaxy presents. 6 months after the treaty was signed, the first joint Imperial Human Research Station opened near the border between their territories. Zarathian scientists worked alongside human engineers, combining theoretical knowledge with practical application. The breakthroughs came faster than anyone anticipated. Human FTL drives, built using Imperial principles but human engineering, proved to be 30% faster than standard Imperial drives. Imperial energy weapons, redesigned using human materials science, became 40% more efficient. Collaborative shipyards began producing hybrid vessels that combined the best of both civilizations' technologies. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the joint military headquarters, watching as the first combined fleet departed for patrol duty. 15 human warships and 20 Imperial vessels flying in formation. A year ago, those ships would have been shooting at each other. Now they were defending each other. Admiral Thexrel stood beside her. The Zarathian had become her counterpart in the joint command structure. Their initial hostile encounter at New Terra seemed like ancient history now. It's remarkable, Thexrel said quietly. A year ago, I came to your system intending to force your submission. Now I watch our ships fly together as allies. The universe works in strange ways. Not strange, Chen corrected gently. Just unexpected. Sometimes the best outcomes are the ones we don't anticipate. I have a question, Thexrel said. Your species spent 400 years preparing for this moment. Building weapons, developing technology, all in anticipation of meeting other species. Yet when you finally did meet us, you showed restraint. Why? Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. Because humanity learned a hard lesson over our history. The most powerful weapon in the universe isn't the one that destroys your enemy. It's the one you never have to use. We built ships that couldn't be beaten so we would never have to fight. We built walls so strong that nobody would dare attack us, which meant we could offer peace from a position of genuine security, rather than desperation. She turned to look at Thexrel. Your empire has lasted 12,000 years through a combination of military might and wise governance. That's impressive. But imagine what you could accomplish if instead of spending resources maintaining dominance over hundreds of subject species, you spent those resources on partnership with equal civilizations. The galaxy is full of mysteries we haven't solved, threats we haven't faced, opportunities we haven't explored. Together, we can accomplish more than either of us could alone. The Empress believes the same, Thexrel said, though convincing the entire empire will take time. There are still those who view humanity as upstart primitives who got lucky. Chen laughed. Let them think that. We'll keep building impossible things while they underestimate us. Speaking of which, I wanted to show you something. She pulled up a display showing a new ship design. It was enormous, dwarfing even the largest human or Imperial vessels currently in service. The design combined human hull density with Imperial shield technology, human weapons with Imperial sensors, human power generation with Imperial faster-than-light drives. The Empress and Earth's president have approved a joint project. The first true hybrid warship. We're calling it the Treaty Class. This is the UN's INS Harmony, named to represent our alliance. Construction begins next month. Humans and Zarathians working side by side to build something neither of us could build alone. Thexeral studied the design with a military officer's eye for detail. It's magnificent. And terrifying. This vessel would be able to defeat either of our previous generation ships with ease. That's the point, Chen said. Because there are things out there in the galaxy that neither of us has encountered yet. The scans from the deep survey teams have picked up anomalies, energy signatures that don't match any known technology, ships that don't match any known configurations. Something is out there, Admiral. Something that might make our previous conflicts look like playground disputes. The Void Collective, Thexeral said quietly. We've been tracking them for the past 3 months. They appeared from uncharted space and have destroyed 2 independent colonies. No communication, no warnings, just overwhelming force followed by complete silence. Exactly. That's why we need ships like the Harmony. That's why this alliance matters. Because whatever the Void Collective is, it's not going to care about our past conflicts or our political differences. It's going to be a threat to all of us. They stood together in silence, watching the combined fleet disappear into faster-than-light travel. 2 species that had nearly gone to war were now preparing to face unknown threats together. Empress Califara had been right. The galaxy was changing. But the change wasn't the end of the Empire. It was the beginning of something new. An alliance built not on dominance but on mutual respect and shared purpose. Admiral Chen smiled as she watched the stars. Humanity had spent 400 years preparing to meet the galaxy. They had built weapons that couldn't be beaten so they would never have to use them. They had built walls so strong that they could offer friendship without fear. And now finally they had found partners worthy of that friendship. The future was uncertain. The Void Collective represented threats they didn't yet understand. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts to resolve and obstacles to overcome. But humanity and the Empire would face them together, combining human determination with imperial wisdom, human innovation with imperial knowledge. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Admiral Chen thought, was exactly how it should be. In the darkness between stars, something watched. The Void Collective observed the new alliance between humanity and the Empire with ancient intelligence. These young species thought they were strong. They thought their combined forces would protect them. They would learn. In time, they would all learn. But that was a story for another day. For now, humanity and the Empire celebrated their new partnership, unaware of the storms gathering in the deep dark, unaware that their greatest challenges were yet to come. But when those challenges arrived, they would face them together, and perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough.